Hello my dear sewing friends, it's Alisa here, and today in front of me I have the pile, which of course means that today we're going to be doing some fixing up, mending, a little bit of upcycling, all of that either to bring our clothes back to life and make them wearable again, or to give them a second life. Now I totally get it that mending and fixing up probably isn't the most exciting thing out there, but it must be done, so we have to tackle it, and that's the reason why I encourage us to do it together, because then we can motivate each other. We can also keep an eye on each other. Grab that pile, let's do it. And I promise you that by the end of it, it does feel great to make the most out of what you have and sort of put it back into circulation and not to waste it. So without any further ado, let's get started. Now today's assortment includes my clothes, kids' clothes, quite a lot of them, and wait for it, a backpack. So I have quite a bit on my plate. Usually after all of the editing and processing, I try to keep these videos for you guys to about 30 minutes. So I'm not sure if I'm gonna get to all of this today, but I will certainly try to do my best. You know me, I usually try to get started with the project that excites me the most, sort of to get that ball rolling, to get a great start. And I have this little sheer blouse. It was actually passed down to me from my mom. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. But it's completely see-through. It is missing a little loop for a button. And I want to get rid of this sort of like little trim on the bottom. But most importantly, I want to line it so it's not so revealing. Let's get right to it. And I'm going to start by removing this bottom trim. I'm going to put it aside and maybe I'll use it sometime in the future. Next, I'm going to tidy up these edges and do a narrow double fold hem. The fabric here is extremely delicate, so I'm using a piece of tearaway stabilizer at the very start of my seam to prevent chewing up the fabric. After I have stitched the first fold, I'm going to carefully trim away the edges, then fold it up once more and then stitch it down again. This type of hem is super versatile, and you can make it narrower, you can make it wider. It definitely adapts, and if you need more of a step-by-step tutorial on this type of hem, then you will find it in the description right underneath this video. Alright, the hem is done. Now let's talk about lining it. I've decided that I'm going to be using cotton voile, and this just came out of the wash, so I'll need to give it a good press. And because lining usually is either identical to the piece itself or nearly identical, basically we're going to be replicating this pattern. Alright, now that the pattern is ready, let's cut it out. And here I do want to mention that the top, the blouse that I'm working with, is of course probably the easiest top that you can find to line, because it's just the front and the back. The pattern pieces are nearly identical. It's a dolman sleeve and there's not much to it in terms of construction, right? So I totally get it that if you're working with a set-in sleeve or a raglan sleeve or a more complex type of blouse, then the steps that you will need to go through are more difficult. So I promise that in the future I will dive in this topic a little bit deeper. I will do a tutorial on how to line ready-made or store-bought blouses, but in this case we're just gonna go through the concept itself. And the first thing that we need to do is, just like in any other blouse, I'm going to start by sewing the shoulder seams. I did that with a straight stitch and then finished up the edges on a serger. I also finished the side seams, but I did not sew them together. Next, I turned it right side out and then placed it inside my blouse, aligning and pinning at the shoulder seams. Now my next step was to stitch it together at the neckline by turning the seam allowance of the lining to the inside and then hand stitching it to the blouse. Now this should ensure a really nice and neat and visible finish. It did take a little bit of time, and once I made my way around to the keyhole closure, There I marked it with a heat erasable pen, then cut into it and also hand stitched it to the blouse by turning in the seam allowance. I also repeated the same steps on the sleeves. Alright, let's take a look. So the neckline is done, back and front. Here it is, all nice and neat. The sleeves have been attached and I left a little bit right over here and I'll show you why. So both of the sleeves are done. So now I will go ahead and sew the side seam. I'm actually going to sew it this way, so that way the serged seam doesn't show on the outside because the fabric is so sheer. So I'm going to put this like that on the bottom here. A little bit of the sleeve isn't going to be attached, but that's all right because it's not going to go anywhere. It's safely tucked in, and I'm going to sew the side seam like this on both sides. And after that, the last thing for me to do is to finish up the hem, and that's it. I'm going to do the same as I did over here, a very narrow double fold hem, just a little bit shorter than the original blouse. Now let's take a look at before and most importantly, the after. It is completely opaque and I'm really happy about that. I did gather the sleeve a little bit. I just think that it looks a little bit better this way. And you can wear it tucked in, you can wear it untucked, whichever way. I'm really happy that finally I can wear this blouse again and not worry about anything showing. Alright, on to the next project, and this one is going to be a lot easier, a lot faster. It is going to be for my daughter, and here I want to encourage you to still watch it even though you might be sewing just for yourself. I totally get it that sometimes watching kids' clothes upcycles doesn't feel as inspiring, but the principles are all the same. Stylistically, of course, they will look different because different colors, different prints, different details, but all of the ideas can be still applied to adult clothes. In this case, I have these little capri leggings. The fabric here is still great and good condition that could be reused. It's double brushed polyester, but the size is way too small. Even the elastic now, I mean, is just too small. But because there's no side seam, I think I can reuse these into a really cute top. First, I'm going to start by cutting it all apart, and this time I will cut right below the elastic because if the elastic is still good, I might use it for another project. Then I will cut through all of the crotch area and down the inseams. Alright, at this point it is time to grab our patterns or pattern blocks in my case and to see what we can do about it. And as I mentioned, my initial idea was to turn these into sleeves, and I think about going for a raglan sleeve. The problem though is that raglan sleeve eats up more fabric than a regular set-in sleeve because it goes all the way up to the neckline. But that's the key, because it does go all the way up to the neckline. It does look more cohesive when a sleeve is one color or one print and the bodice is made from another print. Then it really sort of ties together and it doesn't look like it's an afterthought. It looks like it was intentional. Let's see. It does look like if I use a raglan sleeve that the sleeve itself will need to be more like a 3/4 sleeve rather than a long one because there's just not enough fabric. For the main body, I'm going to use this purple remnant that I have. It is also double brushed polyester, and it wasn't big enough, so I couldn't really fit all the pattern pieces, so I had to opt for making side panels. Now, because of that, the body got made first, and then the sleeves got attached, so kind of in reverse. But other than that, sewing wise, it's just a regular raglan sleeve top. jacket turned out to be quite lovely. My little one likes it as well. We tried it on and she loves the combination of the colors and prints. So I'm really happy that both of these fabrics get to live on for a little bit longer. So 2 big thumbs up on this project, and we're ready to move on to the next one. This is so crazy. This was not on my mending list because there was nothing wrong with this jacket. I kid you not. We just went outside today to play tag, all 3 of us, our family, and my husband somehow happened to pull his hand out of the pocket either too fast or vigorously, and it ripped in this really weird and awkward way. It didn't even rip along the seam. Well, the pocket did, but this part, not at all. So yeah, now I have to fix that. And this jacket is only just about a year old. We bought it last year. So there's definitely plenty of life left in it. We just have to make it work. So I was looking at this rip and I was thinking, okay, how can I fix this? Because it is such an awkward rip and an awkward place. And I thought, you know what if I can just entirely take off the pocket on both sides and perhaps add a rectangle leather patch and then put the pockets back on it. This patch would cover all of the mending that I would do, and it would also look like a design element and therefore wouldn't be visible at all, and it would just look like it was meant to be. So I ran this idea by my husband, and he kind of, I don't know, he didn't really seem too excited, and then he said, I don't really care if the mending is visible, just as long as the coat is still wearable. So I guess we're proceeding with visible mending, which is actually not making the job easier. I would much rather go with the leather patch idea or with any other patch idea, because then at least I can do the mending and then I can cover it. In this case, we would need to do all of this mending as is. I did go to Joann's and I did pick up thread that nearly matches this color, so we'll see what we can do. Now, to be able to get this done, first I need to partially remove the pocket since the rip is all around it. The next step would be to open up a little bit of the side seam, since I will need some sort of entrance in order to fix all of that. And then I will also need to remove some of the stitches from the bottom hem, since the rip goes right into it. It's probably quite hard to see, but the side seam here is constructed with a chain stitch, which I have a love-hate relationship with. On one side, it's much easier to undo, especially when you're doing upcycling. On the other hand, it is quite unstable when you cut through it. So I'm going to secure the edges of the seam that I undid in order to ensure that it doesn't run and doesn't open up more than I need to. Then, to hold the edges of the rip together while I mend them, I'm going to use a little bit of interfacing, place it underneath, butt the edges against each other, and fuse them. For the mending itself, I did test out a couple of options, and I think I'm going to settle on a satin stitch, which I tested right over here on a scrap piece of fabric. Personally, for me, this particular part is the most difficult, the most challenging, because it's just so awkward to get inside of the jacket and underneath the presser foot and get the stitches nice and even. It's really challenging, but as I mentioned before, it has to be done, so we're doing it. Now let's take a look at what we have after getting it done. And I can't really say that I am 100% in love with it. As I mentioned before, I much rather do the leather patch idea, but in this set of circumstances, this is probably as good as it's gonna get. After this, I sort of have to go backwards on all of the steps that I did. So first I have to reattach the pocket. You can see how it's been done right over here. Now I have to close out the side seam. And after that is done, because there's actually an opening in the bottom hem, I can close down the bottom hem. Now let's take a look at before and what it looks like after all of the work is done. My husband already had a chance to wear this jacket out, and although it's not the way that I would have fixed this type of rip, if he wears it and he likes it, I would say a thumbs up. So let's move on to the next one. Now with these next two, there's not much to be done because you've seen me upcycle these from leggings to little legging shorts. Now they're definitely way too small. I do want to save this elastic though, and I'm just gonna cut them apart because the fabric is still pretty good, so perhaps I can use them for some sort of fun applique or something else. But other than that, I don't really have a project for them right this very moment, so I'm gonna cut these apart and put them together with my other materials. Oh goodness, all right. This wasn't on my list either. This is actually brand new. My husband just ordered these work shirts from Amazon and he tried them on and he told me that they are so poorly made that every time he folds back this convertible collar, it doesn't fold back properly because there's no top stitching. There's nothing over here. And sometimes that works, but not necessarily with this blend of cotton polyester. So he said that it feels very, very awkwardly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fix them up a little bit so that way it's a little bit less cumbersome to wear these. I don't necessarily have the exact thread color match, but you know what? It's all right. He'll survive. It's blue. It's just not the exact color blue that I need, but it will be all right. It is kind of sad though that, you know, you buy a piece of clothing from the store and then you bring it home. Well, in this case, it was ordered online. And then you bring it home and then you end up fixing it up anyway. It's kind of, I don't know, defeats the purpose now. It's definitely a little bit of a mess. But anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start right over here at the shoulder seam. Then I'm going to go all the way here, pivot, go all the way up, pivot, and go all the way, all the way, all the way, top stitching all the way till here, pivot again, go down, and all the way to the shoulder seam. And then at the center back, I'm gonna do a couple of rows of stitching like this, so that way, when he folds down the collar, it doesn't bubble up like this. Obviously, this one is a super easy fix. It did take a little bit longer than I thought though, because I had 3 shirts and I also had to secure a bunch of loose threads and thread nests that were all around the shirt in its construction. So I guess I'm just a little bit disappointed that the quality of ready-made clothes nowadays is so below the standard. But here you can see the final result of the top stitching on the collar. Next up is the backpack, which is also my husband's. Let's go ahead, zip these up and turn this wrong side out so that way we can take a look at what's going on. So we have a rip on the strap over here, which we can definitely fix. And then on the inside, the the bottom of the backpack, actually one of the sides of the backpack has detached itself from the bottom seam right over here. So the course of action that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to attach an extra strip of fabric, kind of like a wide bias tape over here. And then we're probably going to reinforce it somehow and reattach it back to the seam that it was originally sewn onto. I'm going to start with a strap, and first I'm going to hand baste it together just to see what am I working with, because a lot of the fabric here has unraveled, and we'll see if I need to reinforce it any further. It definitely needs some reinforcing, so I've cut a little strip of fabric. This is cotton poly blend. First, I'm going to place it like so and sew it down. Next, I'm going to fold it over and enclose it sort of like a bias tape. All right, the strap is fixed. I've cut my strip of fabric, the same that I used for fixing up the strap. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach it to not the very edge of this ripped piece, because the very edge is unraveling like crazy, but probably about 3/8 of an inch away from it, just with a straight stitch all the way around. Alright, that is done. Now I'm going to reinforce it with a little bit of interfacing. My main point here is to interface these edges so that way they don't continue to unravel throughout the wear and tear of the backpack. Here's the interfacing, and as you can see, I already have folded in the edge, so that way I can stitch it down one more time right here on the edge, enclosing all of this. Now here I wanted to mention that, as always, there are so many ways how you can go about fixing rips and tears, mending and upcycling clothes. Usually in my cases, I go with sort of with my gut, based on my previous experiences, and also usually with the most logical explanation. But I wanted to encourage you to take a look at your projects, because everybody has a different project in front of them with a different set of circumstances, so definitely do what's right for you. Alright, it's done, and now the final step of this adventure is to take this edge and sew the fixed up panel to it. And there we have it. This is from the wrong side, from the inside of the backpack. So now let's turn it right side out. All right, let's open up the pockets, double check that. Oh, not this pocket, the wrong pocket. This pocket. All right, yeah, everything is back intact, and the backpack can be used again. Well, I didn't get to conquer my entire pile, so there's definitely going to be a follow-up video, but I think we got done with quite a bit. I truly thank you so much for watching, for being here. I hope you got your mending pile down a little bit as well. And until next time, happy, thoughtful sewing, mending, and upcycling. I love you all. I'll see you very soon. Bye!